What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I am Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Jesse Zerwell. Today, we have a very special guest who is the host of the show Millennial Splaining, which you can find on YouTube. Her name is Bess Goden. Bess, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. No, I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. I think I found you through Fred Hampton, maybe, or I don't know, people will tag each other or whatever. And so that's usually how I find like new channels and stuff like that. The first thing I wanted to ask you is because I've noticed that up until recently, it's been like a bunch of white dudes in independent media. No offense, Jesse. But we're starting to see a lot more women of color entering into the independent media space. So what made you decide to start a channel and to enter into this ridiculously crazy world?
I'm glad you asked that question, actually. I feel like I've wanted to say these things for years. I've wanted to say these things since at the very least, like 2015. Like I had plans, I had written articles and stuff like that, and not published anywhere pretty, but I had plans to do this, but my life was always in flux. I happened to have a lot of family illness. So my parents passed away when I came out of college, and then after that, I started to take care of my grandpa, who steadily got worse with heart problems and then dementia. And so after getting my master's, I ended up moving back home to live with him in his 1-bedroom apartment. And ever since I did that, I was completely broke. I went even more broke. And then ever since I did that, I've just been trying to better my situation. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I've been focusing on, unfortunately, for the past really 10 to 15 years, instead of doing anything with my education. I've always, I always wanted to say certain things, and I certainly wanted to say a lot after Donald Trump got elected. And actually my progression in politics was a little bit like Ryan Knight. So I was always a lefty. I was always a socialist. I even went to ISO meetings back when I first got out of college. I lived in Queens at the time. And, so I always believed in that stuff, but I always had this sort of sense. I always bought the BS that it's just not feasible. It's just not feasible for whatever reason. And so when I woke up to politics, it wasn't until I started to realize that everything that was going on with Trump actually was going on with every other politician ever. And I just didn't realize it. And so that was my awakening. I followed everything that, Trump supposedly did. I was a super Russiagate person. I listened to a podcast called Gaslit Nation for a while. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they really go into detail about, Trump's Russia connections and, everything. They lay out everything. And I was all into it and whatever. And so when I started to hear, I started to pay attention to left podcasters more around 2020. And when I started to hear that Russiagate, was BS and people were against it, I was like, but this is known facts. So I don't understand. And then I started to realize, it's not that you guys deny that he has Russian oligarchs living in his house, as you mentioned on Savvy's show just now, because she goes into, there's 2 women who run that podcast. I forget their names right now, but they're excellent. They're actually very smart people, and they go into detail about everything that's in the public, and there's a lot in the public record. But I didn't realize that when Biden started to look like a serious candidate, and I started to look into his past and how, disgusting it really was, I started to realize, Tara Reid was a huge turning point for me. Realizing that, Hunter Biden's mishaps, were a real thing. That was a turning point. And then, the final straw was how Bernie got sandbagged, and then he said, "Thank you very much. Please put me in the Democratic Party." And I was like, "Okay, I'm done." This is all kinds of disappointing here.
Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
But it's important that you can look back on that and both recognize and admit that you were wrong in a sense, or you were getting wrong information. And
right.
I can relate to that with regard to Syria, because in the beginning of the Syrian civil war, if you still want to call it a civil war, I bought into Assad being this brutal dictator slaughtering his people. And I didn't know the more complex dynamics of what was happening with regard to the US funding, essentially jihadist proxies to fight against Assad and to maintain the US presence at the oil fields in Syria. So that's something I'm totally willing to admit I was wrong on at first. And I think when we are wrong, it's important to acknowledge that.
Well, I think that that speaks to the fact that none of us are impervious to propaganda. We all fall victim to it. And, we're bombarded with it constantly. I mean, I bought into Obama. I mean, on a certain level, I never thought he was going to be like, just like a saving grace or whatever. But the whole hope and change stuff and the first Black president, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is really like, we're moving in the right direction. We've come a long way. I voted for him. I was super legitimately hopeful about Obama. I hate myself for it now that I voted for him. I absolutely hate myself for it. It's like one of my biggest regrets. But I think it's really important for people to recognize that, it's okay. It's okay. Propaganda is very powerful, and it's okay to just admit that you were wrong and to examine the facts and change your mind. That's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not embarrassed by, my sort of evolution on that front either, because the thing is, like, I didn't change. My principles never changed throughout that entire process, right? I just happened to buy into the idea that we couldn't do any better. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't at heart a socialist, a severe, a radical feminist, like, LGBTQ rights activist. Like, all of these things matter to me, and I held very radical positions compared to a lot of my lib friends. And they would, I always felt out of place in being in the Democratic Party, because all of my lib friends were around me and saying like, oh, you're so radical and left, whatever. Like, it like that. I felt alienated, but I still felt at some level of me was being practical or something. But, I mean, now that I've realized that really we're dealing with like Tammany Hall level of corruption from everybody, like including AOC at this point, perhaps. Like,
absolutely.
Yes. Like, yeah. Then I cannot in good conscience back these people anymore. I really can't.
Yeah. So I'm curious then, like, you said that you like wanted to say, was Bernie kind of influential in your evolution? Because I know that he was for a lot of people, and people will give me a lot of shit because I'm really hard on him, justifiably so in my personal opinion. But I will still give him credit that him running in 2015 certainly did wake a lot of people up. I know for me personally, I felt like I was like on an island by myself. I'm in small town Ohio. I had no idea. Like I'm surrounded by Trump voters. So when Bernie ran, I'm like, oh, hey, I found my people. These are my people, which I thought they were my people. Some of them turned out to not be my people. But I thought, okay, look, I'm not the only one who believes in this stuff. So was that kind of something that you experienced too with Bernie in 2015?
Yeah, actually, I had a different, again, so like I was into being practical, right? So I was a Hillary supporter. Why? Because I thought she had the iron fist to be able to beat Trump.
So is Noam Chomsky.
Extremely wrong about that. Yes, I know. I probably had a lot of my beliefs aligned with Noam's earlier on. And now him and I have diverged on a number of things. Not that I know him personally, but yeah, I always felt so like this is the example I like to point to. Bernie Sanders, directly after Trump got elected, came out publicly, like I'm talking days within Trump's election. He comes out publicly and he says, if Trump is willing to come to the table, I will talk about a $10 minimum wage. And I said, oh my God, first of all, I'm Jewish, so I can say this. Are you a Jew? Are you trying to bargain yourself down before you even sat down at the bargaining table? I'm literally so embarrassed for you right now. I mean, and that from that moment, I just never really, I never really had a moment where I said, well, like Hillary was terrible. And I mean, like, I never really believed that Hillary was good. So I I just backed her because I thought she was stronger. And, you know, I really bought into the red versus blue team politics thing. And, you know, believed that it was the lesser of two evils kind of situation. So I never really thought of Bernie as somebody who had, you know, the iron fist to really, defeat Trump, take over the Democratic
You were
Party.
right about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the iron. He is so weak. You're right. I'm embarrassed for him. Like he's turned into, I mean, he's like a bitch mittens meme now. Like that's the best he's got is he's the bitch mittens meme, you know, like he's dreadfully pathetic. It's so bad. And listen, like I supported Bernie in 2016. I've always been super left. I've never believed in electoral politics. Again, I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And I'm going to again give myself an excuse. I had my first child in 2008. So I was hormonal and emotional and like was desperate for hope and change. And so that's my excuse. And I'm sticking to that. But I had never been like an electoral politics person. I never have been. I never thought that it was like a change maker. I've always been an activist. I was very into mutual aid. But like when Bernie came around in 2016, personally, I was like, okay, so we're like about to head off of a cliff and Bernie like represents an opportunity to like scoot us back just enough so that we don't go off that cliff. And so I went in full force. I'm like, okay, I'm going to donate. I'm going to phone bank. I'm going to canvas. I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to try really hard to get this dude elected because this might represent our last chance to really like put a stop to the bleeding, or at least, help, like, kind of stave off some of the damage that's being done. And when he walked off the field and especially after WikiLeaks, who obviously I'm a huge supporter of, and when WikiLeaks gave him all of the ammunition necessary for him to make a legitimate fight, and to actually fight for the people who, I mean, when I was canvassing for him, I met people who, and I tell this story all the time. Maybe I shouldn't say her name. Well, I guess just her first name is fine. Her name was Susan. And she was this amazing little old lady, probably in her 70s. But she would skip meals. She was on like very fixed budget. Because she's an older person. So she's on like Social Security and all that stuff. She would skip meals to send Bernie Sanders $10. And she deserved better. She deserved somebody who was going to fight for her. And I got very close with her. She lives very near to me. I still talk to her to this day. And that was like that was it. I was done with Bernie Sanders. I was done when he walked off the field after screwing over my friend Susan and ignoring the information that WikiLeaks gave him to, and still to this day won't say Julian Assange's name. I was done with him. So, I mean, you're right. I'm embarrassed for him too. He's a hot mess.
And another example is he's constantly claiming to stand in solidarity with regular human beings and their problems and their welfare, but he can't even muster the spine to support BDS or even utter BDS beyond just a First Amendment context. Like he won't go there. And this is such an obvious nonviolent, and it yields results, such a good tactic against Israeli apartheid. And the proof is in the pudding. He can't even bring himself to utter the three letters. And there are so many more examples, but it's all surfaces with him, like it is with so many politicians. And once you barely even scratch below that surface, you start to see all the detritus that's down there. And he's very good at putting on an act, as are most politicians. And he duped people twice. And now he gets to get profiled in the New York Times by Maureen O'Dowd on the weekends. And she asks him how he likes his latte at Starbucks. Questions like these, which are of the utmost importance to our future.
Yeah.
Well, even Kyle Kulinski gets the chance to interview Bernie Sanders. He gets like 10 minutes with Bernie Sanders, right? What does he ask him? Do you prefer LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
What was his answer?
I don't even know.
After he got asked out of that interview with Crystal, he did? Okay, I didn't hear the follow-up to that story.
So what happened was when they first started the podcast, apparently Crystal had initially reached out, as you do when you just like put out a bunch of asks, right? And they never got back to her. And so then like months later, they approached her and they said, sure, we'll do this interview, but only if it's just you. So her and Kyle talked about it. Kyle was pissed, as he should be. And so they decided to go ahead and do it. And then Kyle came out and said that, yes, Bernie did in fact kick him off of his own show, essentially. And that should be a red flag to anybody. First of all, I don't understand why people give these politicians so many passes. They should be willing to speak to anybody, any media person whatsoever. It doesn't matter. And the fact that they won't go on like a Jimmy Dore or even a Kyle Kalinske is so milquetoast.
Yeah.
There's nothing like bold, or he's not going to ask you tough questions. I mean, he's made that abundantly clear.
Yeah.
So the fact that you won't even speak to Kyle Kalinske is a problem.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. I really feel like Bernie, like Biden, has taken this as his sort of retirement package. That's what it feels like. So I'm not super surprised about that. I mean, I think he wants every possible, ease in his life right now, like every interview to be, a easy breezy, and he doesn't want any trouble, and he doesn't want to stir any pots, which is exactly the opposite of what we need him to do.
And he gets super offended by like Crystal pushed back even just a tiny bit, and he was like irritated. And dude, you're a public official, you're an elected official, you have to answer questions.
Yeah,
that's what I found really frustrating about the Capitol, the Capitol protest, the slumber party. Like Max Blumenthal gave like a totally reasonable interview to Cori Bush, asked her totally legitimate questions, including the final one where he asked about force the vote and Medicare for all, which is directly related to what's happening with evictions. And her staff like freaks out and like gets in between her and Max and like gets angry. And then Anna Kasparian says he's harassing Cori Bush. And no, they're elected officials. They have to answer these questions. It's ridiculous to try to make these excuses.
Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you have to interrupt me.
And it's not like he's going to their places of residence and screaming outside of their houses or their Georgetown apartments. He's in front of their place of work. They're there voluntarily in public as public officials. If that's not the time to ask them the questions that need to be asked, then when is? And it just gives the lie to all of it when their PR and other handlers, their PR people and other handlers step in and, just put that border between these very, not just significant, but urgent questions and them having to try to answer them because they don't have any answers for them. That's the problem.
Yep. So let me just say one more thing about Bernie, and then I'll leave him alone, and he can retire after the comment. He also, I believe, said on more than one occasion that he isn't, I don't know if he said he's against reparations for African Americans, but he said that he doesn't think it's practical. We'll put it that way. And I made a pretty lengthy argument as to why I thought that was extremely rich coming from a Jewish person, considering that Jews got reparations twice. So, I think that's pretty two-sided of him.
Yeah.
Anywho, moving on to
well, let me just say one more thing about that. It's not his place to decide. He can have an opinion, but it's not his place to decide whatsoever in any official capacity, whether whether reparations, whatever form they take, go through or not. So he can just stay in his lane there as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm just tired of rich white men speaking on Black issues like that. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what you have to say. And listen, I'm not smart enough to know like what reparations will look like, how it will work, how it will be dispersed. I have no idea how all that works. All I know is that I 100% support reparations. However, the Black community sees fit to carry that out.
Absolutely.
And that's the end of my opinion. That's
it.
And
that's all we should be contributing. I mean, seriously, it shouldn't be a conversation of whether, it should be a conversation of when. I mean,
when
now.
And how, but when should be now, and how is none of my business. That's up to the Black community to decide.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And with programs like Medicare for All and student debt, you can just print more money. I know that sounds insane, but you can do that because the US dollar is an extremely unique position. We are, not only do we print our own money, which only a certain amount of countries do, but a lot of other countries have our dollar as their federal reserve in their bank accounts. And also Saudi Arabia has promised to pay
Petrodollar.
The petrodollar, exactly. So that gives the American dollar an extremely unique standing. So anytime somebody says like, oh, well, if you print money, inflation, and look at these other countries, there's no other currency like the American dollar right now. There just isn't. Okay. And we are not even using a minuscule amount of what we could be pushing that boundary. Okay. So like, yes, there is a boundary. There is an inflation boundary, but we're not even, we're like here and the boundary's up here. Okay. So like we could go ahead and eliminate homelessness and Medicare for all that stuff before we even got close to seeing that boundary happen up here.
Well, and not only that, how about we just reallocate what we're spending away from like bombs and bank bailouts and tax breaks for billionaires and start spending it on things like Medicare for all and reparations and, a living wage and homelessness. Let's try that maybe, instead of blowing shit up, let's build up our communities. Let's try that.
But as I said, when we talked to Reed Coverdale last night, the Democrats aren't concerned about how much money gets spent on the military. Their main concern right now, and you can read this in Defense Times, is getting a military budget passed just for the sake of getting the military budget passed, because it's a benchmark that every administration has to hit, and the Biden administration hasn't hit it yet. And so they're completely willing to roll over and add billions of dollars to what Biden initially presented as the baseline for the budget, or the top line for the budget, and just keep spending through the roof for forever wars. And it's really just to complete this gesture of, well, we passed the budget, so on to the next thing, despite the fact that, as we've been talking about, it's diverting just a disgusting amount of money toward unnecessary wars and away from the welfare of just about everybody in this country, minus the decision makers and the super wealthy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
It's disgusting. And it's, I talk about this all the time, but grown ass adults are still willing to accept that we spend, we just added another $25 billion onto the military budget, another $25 billion. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. There's like crises like coming out of our asses, and we're giving $25 billion to blow people up.
That's what I'm referring to. Initially it was, I think, around 714 billion. And then the Democrats agreed for the sake of getting it passed to add 25 billion to that, because that's what Republicans have been asking for.
But if we want Medicare for all, how are we going to pay for that? Well, how about we not blow people up?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's enforce tax laws that are already on the books.
Right.
We're just not enforcing them. There's already laws for taxing the rich, and we just don't enforce them. We could do that. We could do one.
And we allow rich people to buy our government. Our government is completely under corporate capture. It's completely under corporate capture, and it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Amazon is the perfect example of this. Not only does it run the CIA's server, but it's owned by the richest man in the world, who owns the Washington Post, one of the most influential propaganda rags in the world, and they pay no taxes. And I don't see how you can look at that and say that's not dictatorial in some way. It's insane. It's insane, but we're just expected to swallow that pill and go along with it. And that's what's been happening. Not us per se, but a lot of other people. And that's not to blame them, because up to a point, it's like, what can you do? You know, we can have these conversations, but the totality is so massive. It's like, what do we do? What can
It's
we do?
over fucking whelming.
I would just point out that all of those things that you like, the dystopia that you described that we are living in, is exactly what people who fear communism thinks will happen.
Mm-hmm. They're living it.
Yeah.
It's here, baby. It's here.
They're like, oh my God, communism is so scary. Look at all these things are going to happen. Look around you. You know? Jesus. That's so frustrating to me. And I understand that it's because the propaganda game in this country is incredibly effective. And you know, they've like, communism has been like the scare word. Socialism has been the scare word. The fact that we're still using Russia as a boogeyman is amazing. And that's no offense to you. You said you were a Russiagate person or at some point. It's no offense to you. Like I said, propaganda is very effective in this country. And that's legitimately what we're up against. And that's, I mean, I'm going to get preachy about Julian Assange again, but that's why I say this all the time, that really the front line for everything is narrative control, because we can't fight effectively for anything if we aren't able to combat propaganda. And, you know, that's what Julian Assange is about. That's what the all of the protest laws are about. The anti-protest laws are about that. I mean, you cannot like check Twitter without seeing a direct assault on the First Amendment on a daily fucking basis. And it's not just happening in this country, it's happening across the globe. And what's happening with Julian Assange is a really terrifying aspect of it, because essentially what that means, and basically what the United States said in court, is that they're basically just seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism, period. That's what this means. And so they're saying that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what country you live in. It doesn't matter. If you publish something that we don't like or that embarrasses us, then we're going to come for you. And now we have, like in the UK, they're getting ready to attempt to pass something on their Official Secrets Act, which is they're going to give themselves an Espionage Act, which basically says that journalists, if you publish something that the government doesn't like, they can throw you in jail for 14 years. And the chilling effect that that has already had on media is evident. I mean, you can see it all across the board, and including in independent journalism. Like, we can't get people to cover Julian Assange because they're afraid of what will happen to their channels. So, you know, it's a really terrifying thing, but it really is the front line of everything else. If you want healthcare, if you want education, if you want to fight for the environment, if you want better jobs, if you want infrastructure, it doesn't matter. You cannot effectively combat or effectively fight for anything that you care about without a free press and freedom of speech. Period. Okay, I'm done preaching now.
No, like,
preach, sister.
Well,
I do this all the time. I can't help it. And I'll just say this week, and I'm sure we all go through this, but like, I've been like really just pissed off for whatever reason. I don't know. It's just like everything catches up to you. I think a little bit of it is that Julian Assange has a court date on Wednesday next week. And so I'm like, you know, like it just weighs on you. So I've just been like really pissy, and that just makes me extra ranty. So there's my excuse. Not that I'm not always ranty.
I mean, there's always a reason to get pissed off in this world. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I want to say? Oh yeah. I want to point out too, when we don't really talk about this too much on the left, that the news and the news and information industry is a part of the entertainment industry in the country. And I'm not saying that it should be. I'm just saying that practically speaking, corporation family wise, that's the case. Right. So, and that's something that we don't talk about a lot either, because the entertainment industry has huge donations to both parties, and they're extremely involved in politics, and they're very interested in foreign trade laws and stuff like that too, and international property, intellectual property laws, internationally speaking, because they republish a lot of international stuff here, and they put different names on it, and anyway, it's they're interested, and I think that we don't really talk about that very much either, because they're I mean, like, we're seeing a lot of people, I think, do what I did a little bit with after Trump. We're seeing a lot of people say, okay, either separating into blue dogs, which I believe that like Bernie and AOC at this point are blue dogs. And then the other people who are just, like, burn the whole system down at this point. I'm on the burn the whole system down at this point. I'm so done. So like, we're also seeing independent journalists do that too. We're also seeing independent journalists pick a side, people that I had followed. Like, I never really followed Anna Kasparian too much, but I definitely followed like Nomiki Konst and Emma Vigeland. Yeah, I mean, like people that I just didn't know because they were against Trump for so long. I just didn't, really know that much about them or their belief systems or whatever. So, I now am starting to realize, how much work we really have to do. How much work we really have to do, because we're not just fighting against, the news stations. We're fighting against the entire entertainment industry that is backing those news stations. And we are also fighting against people's ennui in some capacity, right? I mean, when I talked about not having, my financial situation wasn't stable enough for me to really concentrate on doing a podcast, and it still isn't great. I'm still kind of like doing it as I can at this point. Like it took me a week to get Susan Sarandon's speeches out after the Medicare for All thing, and I feel terrible. It looks like ass, but whatever. So, like I'm just doing what I can here. And, essentially that is the attitude of most people. Like people will sit around, workers will sit around and have their, like family parties or whatever and debate this kind of stuff or whatever. But then they go home and they go to work and they go home and they go to work and they go home and they go to work. And that's it. That's all they got time for, because they cannot dedicate themselves into looking into who these people are. They cannot dedicate them. They need somebody to present them these packages, right? So anyway, that's a really long-winded way of saying support independent media big
Please.
Time.
Yes.
And
yeah,
and
that's the way to topple the entertainment industry, is by doing what we're doing here and lifting each other up. Absolutely. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
I was just going to say that all falls under the umbrella of capitalism, and it's structured that way on purpose to not just keep you distracted, but fatigued to the point where you could possibly think about these people of power, these issues, but you just are so caught up in the machine that you don't have the time or energy, like you said, at the end of the day to do any sort of deep research or analysis. And that's not the fault of people who are caught up in that. That's the fault of this system that we're all trapped in, and that we're told essentially from birth is the only way, the only system that works, which is not true. Capitalism didn't arise out of some law of nature. So
right. I love when people are like, just accept that this is the best we can do. No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, or they ask, well, what's your alternative? And as if you're supposed to have a watertight alternative ready to go. And
right.
That's not the point. The point is to have substantial conversations about an alternative and then try to forge one from there together. But
well, and just literally try anything. Like literally, like I said earlier, maybe we could just stop bombing people. Let's start there. Let's stop bombing people for oil and for money. Let's just do that. That seems like a pretty reasonable and grown-up request, right? Like I'm a grown-ass adult. I think that, and we talk about this all the time, or I talk about this all the time. We teach our kids, like, use your words, and then our leaders blow shit up for money. And it's ridiculous. It's this completely ridiculous like system. Like, why can't, and then I'm called like a crazy hippie because I want to live in a world where we don't blow people up for money. Why is that not the end goal? Why are we not working towards that as a species? Like, shouldn't we be like working towards being able to live harmoniously and work as a collective and try to take care of everybody? And why is that not the goal? It's so fucking bizarre to me. It really is. It's really, I don't know. But I want to ask you something, because I'm super curious about this. Anytime I talk to somebody who's like, I don't want to say shit lib, because I know you're not a shit lib, but that's like the term that always comes out of my mouth because it's just habit. No, I know. But like somebody who has like evolved in their thinking, was there any like one galvanizing moment, or was it like kind of a gradual like realization of like, oh, well, maybe this isn't right, and wait, what a second, was it like one moment where you're like, okay, no?
So here's what it is. Like like I said, it was a sort of a storm of circumstances. I was too busy to care about politics, number one. Number two, because this, again, I like to say this is my second side hustle. It's actually my third because I also do door dashing. But at the time, my other side hustle, which is making art, I really tried to put 100% of my free time into doing that. So that's all I was concerned about. I wasn't watching the news. I couldn't because I was just too busy doing work during the day. And then at the end of the day, watching YouTube videos or whatever. Anyway, so I just ate what I was fed. And then I got to a point in my life where I started to be able to pay attention. And then that was really the turning point, honestly, because I had jobs up until my previous job. I had jobs in retail pretty much back to back to back to back. That's what I did for a living, even though I've had other jobs and I'm smart and whatever. But you cannot look at your phone. You cannot sit down. You cannot do anything except, swallow a hot dog on a 15-minute break. You don't have time to think about that kind of stuff. So I wasn't in front of a computer. When I started to be in front of a computer was actually 2015. And then Trump got elected 2016. So that's when I started, waking up to stuff. And I thought it was all Trump. And that's how I sort of got swept into, the red versus blue thing. I mean, again, I was always a Democrat. My parents were always Democrats. My parents were hippies. My mother was a huge feminist. My dad was actually a huge feminist, so I came from a very liberal bubble background. I'm on the coast. I'm in New Jersey. So we,
Same here.
So is Jesse.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, rock on.
I don't like Springsteen though.
Neither. I hate.
He's kind of a douche canoe at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Rich white guy.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, the people who were attracted to him were, other middle-class white guys that were, somehow felt like they were connected to the working class in some way through him.
And he was good at that. I think he was legit at the beginning, but once you get to a certain level of wealth, he has no concept of what that means anymore.
Right.
So now it's just like a cosplay or whatever.
Yeah. And he's buddy with Obama.
Yeah.
They do some sort of.
They did a podcast or something.
Yeah.
Oh, of course they did.
Fucking weirdos. Anyways, so okay. I know that you said that you thought it was a whole Trump was the problem, which I think a lot of people he was built up in the media as this existential threat. So I feel like a lot of people really bought into that. But I feel like one of the best things about Trump was that he had no gift for subtlety, and so very often just blurted out stuff that he was my favorite example was when he said about Syria, we're going to take their oil. And I'm like, thank you. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. So is that something that was that something that you recognized too? Or because I know a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people just thought that he was the scary evil threat, and then but they don't put the connection in that, hey, sometimes he actually did some good things by exposing he ripped the mask off.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, I had no idea that was the thing. And now that I realize that that's what he did, that I'm my mind was seriously blown the day that I realized.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely, thought he was the problem. I definitely if you go to my website, belensplain.com, there is a link to my articles. I had a Medium. I still have it. But I have a couple of articles from right after when he was elected, and I thought it was the end of the goddamn world. I was I think, I don't remember if I was with my girlfriend at the time or not, but I was they're going to put us in concentration camps again. I drew a comic of people standing in line for a concentration camp. And it was a black guy, an Arab, and a Jew, and a gay guy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's embarrassing, but it's still there. So go look at it. because I get paid for it if you do. So
no, it's not embarrassing. Like, I don't think you should be embarrassed by it, because I think that a lot of people were convinced that that was the case.
Yeah.
And I think that it was really the way that it was played up, and the way, because they're very good at using fear against people. And I think that the way that it was played up, it really, and Jimmy Dore explains it like your lizard brain, like everybody freaked the fuck out about Donald Trump. And so I don't think it's something that it's cool that you're able to recognize it, admit to it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, I think it's an ego thing. I think a lot of people, I actually think that there are a lot of people who know more than they're actually letting on, because their ego won't allow them to admit that they were wrong. Yeah. And so people who are able to do that are my favorite people. I love that.
Well, thank you.
I remember having conversations with people older than me before the Mueller report came out, and as we all know, didn't show anything whatsoever aside from wasted taxpayer money. But asking them, what has you so convinced? What proof have you seen? Do you even know of one person who had their vote changed because of something they saw on Facebook that originated in Russia? And they had no answer for that except, well, come on, you feel something's amiss, don't you? You can't deny that. And I would look at them without any answer, just baffled. And it was really like the lizard brain kicking in. And also, it seemed like so many people wanted there to be something, because they viscerally despised, they hated the man. And a lot of them still do. We see it. The guy is out of office, and there's still people, people like us, regular people, but also the government, the same people, the Adam Schiffs, the AOCs, they're still going after him like he's some clear and present danger, and they can't let it go. It became pathological so long ago, but now it's like beyond pathological. And I don't know how, or if it's even possible to wake those people up anymore, because they are asleep. They really are asleep, at least when it comes to that. But I think you
hope on that front, actually, because I have this conversation with one of my friends a lot. He knows that Joe Biden is no good, right? Like, he knew it from day one. He voted for Joe Biden because he was better than Trump. It wasn't like, he was for Bernie before in the primary. So, it's not that like he doesn't know that Biden, like he believes in Tara Reid, and he knows that Biden is but he just somehow believes that he's a little bit better than Trump. He's like, well, and one point I think is a little bit valid. Trump had the ability to sort of stir up just like the cretins of the underworld of white supremacy. And that was very scary to a lot of people, including myself. And I think that, that's something that we haven't seen en masse for a long time. And we saw it, in prime time as well. I think that was a huge part of it. And I think that that resonates so on such an emotional level with people who really identified with Obama and felt he was progressive, and felt that the country was moving in some kind of right direction, even if they were ultimately disappointed with Obama's performance and then Biden's later on. I don't really know anybody who thinks Biden is a good guy.
Bernie
I know
does.
Well, yeah. I don't know.
He's my good friend. He's a decent man.
They're homies.
Yeah.
Who I know personally, and like, even I'm talking about people who even are like blue dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like, that nobody thinks that Biden is like, the pick of the litter. It's just that he's better than Trump, and that's what got him into office. So,
and even that's arguable. I think, objectively speaking, he's worse on a great many issues. There are more kids in cages now than before. Foreign policy, he's equal to, probably worse. I mean, we've got numerous coups that are being attempted. We've got, he's illegally bombing Syria on a regular basis. He's still, funding the Yemen genocide. I mean, he's not done anything for us on COVID. His response has not been any better whatsoever than Trump's. It's arguably worse.
Worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm 300% with you on this. Like, I would have taken that line, even it maybe a year and a half ago. But I can't possibly defend it today because he's in power. Democrats are in power and they're showing us that they're not going to do it. They're not going to help us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, he has given us less money than Trump, right? He literally gave us what, 1,400, and Trump gave us 2,600.
Yeah.
That's
after, like, please vote in the Georgia special election and we'll give you $2,000 checks. Psych. Yes. Here's 1,400.
How much are you going to nickel and dime the American people who you're now kicking out of the houses? And please, let's definitely talk about the stupid eviction stunt.
Yes. Can we?
Yes.
Can we?
God.
Okay. You want to start? Because I'll rant. You go ahead.
Oh my God. Yes, please. Thank you. I have so much to say.
I know.
Where were the activists, right? Every video you see of that, there's like 14 people there. Like, first of all, if you were actually doing an action, if you actually were like part of an organization, like, okay, I used to volunteer with MPP, with Movement for People's Party. And I remember when they did Occupy Congress. This was, I think, like 2 summers ago. I can't remember exactly. And they went to like congressmen's houses to protest for, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, all the things. And, there were like, I, as a video editor, tried to, publicize the events that had the most people at it, right? So like in an event as small as that, like I would have been really, finding it difficult to visually make it look convincing as a real action, because like even the Medicare for all events, what they ignored, okay, even the New York City one, which was small compared to the DC one and the LA one, we still had more people gathered on a New York street. They closed the fucking park. They closed the park we were supposed to be at in response to us requesting to have the march there. And we did it outside the park anyway, on the street, and there were more people at that than there were on the Capitol steps. Hands down.
Yes. Yeah. And these Congress people, they have huge platforms. They tweeted about it a couple times or what. They could have been, first of all, the fact that they did it last fucking minute, get the fuck out of here. And then Cory Bush is like, we've been working behind the scenes for months. And then AOC is like, we were caught off guard. They can't even get their lies straight. And so they come in last minute. They don't talk, like they don't publicize it. They don't talk about it. It's just a bunch of staffers. And they have huge platforms. They could have had people coming there. 100%. They could have, and it was a choice. It's all political theater. This had nothing to do with, and that's why they didn't come in with like an actual solution. It was like, we're going to kick the can down the road for a little bit longer, but we're not going to actually go for like cancellation of rent. We're just going to, try to extend this so that I can increase my national standing on the public stage.
And even if they were working behind the scenes, which they obviously weren't, that right there is an admission that this isn't a democratic system we live in. If they're working behind the scenes outside of our purview to decide something so serious that affects so many people, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they can just default to that as an excuse and nobody bats an eye, that's scary. That's frightening. And we should all.
And they do it all the time. They did it with Force the Vote. AOC kept saying, "Oh, we're working behind the scenes. You guys you feel bad for us. You're so mean, and you don't see all the work that we're doing behind the scenes." Well, we fucking should see all the work you're doing behind the scenes. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but like, you picked this position in life, mm-hmm. right? Like nobody came up to your door and said, "Hey, can you just be like, a millennial leader, de facto millennial leader? We could really use you to have 11 million Twitter followers." No, nobody said that. She made that happen for herself, right? So I don't like, and I'm probably going to regret this if I ever get a following large enough to where I get 1 million insults a day. But like, I I don't really want to hear it because that's part of what you bargained for. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like I used to, just out of pure anger from my situation, I used to go on Facebook and go into like some super like rad feminist chat groups and just argue with people, or like socialist chat groups, because there are a surprising number of misogynists in socialist chat groups on Facebook. And I got death threats like on a daily basis. And, you know, not to downplay any kind of death threat, like it's scary, I get it, but like I'm not sitting here having a panic attack over every time it happens to me, because like I gotta live, you know. So like, and this is Facebook, like you can see where I live on Facebook. You know, I mean, like it's my information is just as public, I think, as a, you know, as a senator's. So
But
I mean,
AOC, with regard to January 6th, she wasn't even in the building when it
No.
was stormed. And then I
And I don't
believe,
even give a shit. I don't give a shit.
and then I
I
believe
don't give a shit.
she was on the convoy of Congress people that was bust out. And
Yes.
she was in no danger at all. But
No.
she's like been tapped as the go-to for like the kabuki theater of crying after something like this happens, that you know, becomes a rallying cry for the Dems.
No, but Bess is right. She put herself in this position. She decided to run for office. She knew what she was doing when she did that. Like, it's no secret what you're getting yourself into if you become an elected official. So you made that choice for yourself. I don't give a shit about your trauma. I don't care if you guys come for me. I really do not, because here's the thing. I'm worried about the trauma of the American people. And that's who she's supposed to be working for. That's who she's supposed to be fighting for. And she's failing. And so, you know, you're in a position of power. I don't give a shit. I just don't have any sympathy for that at all. I just don't. I don't have the energy for it. You are a rich, extremely powerful person who already has an unbelievable amount of privilege. You have healthcare. You have, you know, like everything. You have everything you want for nothing. And you know, you want to like hold like a publicly funded therapy session on the House floor. Where's the publicly funded therapy session for the people who are about to be evicted? Where's the publicly funded therapy session for the people who've been suffering through COVID, who have lost their jobs, who can't take their kids to the doctor? Where's the publicly? She ain't doing shit for them. So when she starts doing something for the people who are actually suffering through trauma, then maybe I'll give a shit. But I just don't have the like emotional capacity to care. I just don't.
Yeah, I tweeted out, it was a while ago now, but it was a simple question. In the time she's been in office, what has AOC actually done or accomplished? And the vitriolic responses I got, I wasn't surprised at, but nobody had an answer. Not one person had an answer. And I know it's because they don't go and look at her voting record, which is very easily accessible online. You can find it. You can go to VoteSmart. You can go to Open Secrets. There are
not good.
Other resources. Yeah, her first vote, which Misty and I have talked about on other shows, was to continue funding and expanding NATO. And when Max Blumenthal was on the show, he was an early guest on this show when I was still doing it myself. And he said his response to that, because we talked about it, and, you know, he has a sense of humor, but he was mostly serious in saying that AOC probably has no idea what NATO is. I mean, she probably has a vague idea, but to get granular on it, she probably is almost completely ignorant. And that's part of the problem too, is that these aren't fundamentally smart people at the end of the day. They're opportunistic people. They're smart at being opportunistic, but that's about it.
So okay, I like musicals. Okay. I went to my bachelor's degree was in musical theater. And I really love Wicked, and don't judge me. There is a line in the song Popular that's like, you know, it's not about aptitude, it's the way you're viewed. So it's very shrewd to be popular. I mean, that just sums up everything, if you ask me. I mean, I was, fortunate enough to have a liberal background. I went to private schools because my mom was a private school teacher. And I, was encouraged to think for myself. I was encouraged to have opinions. And then I didn't realize how weird that was until I got into the real world and started working real jobs. And then, I was shunned for doing those kinds of things. And it's just, I really, I believe that we are, living in the capitalist hell to fund their socialist paradise. Anyway, that's kind of a little off topic from AOC, but jumping back to her, and I remember you said, Misty, I think that she had brought up at some point that she was like emotionally abused or something by Nancy Pelosi and her other co-workers. And
I think Sabby brought that up. Yeah.
Brought that up. Okay. I know Afeni had like several conversations with them, and I'm having her on my show next week. So I'm interested to hear what she has to say about that. But if that literally crossed her lips, here's like 3,000,010. I have no sympathy for that, because there are so many people that are stuck in emotionally and physically abusive situations because they can't afford anything else, right? There are people who have just gotten evicted that are now going back to their abusive parents' house, their abusive husband's house, or whatever, because they got nowhere else to go. Ridiculous.
How many women, or I guess men too, but I think how many people are in abusive relationships because they don't have healthcare and they're reliant on their spouse or their partner for healthcare for themselves or their children. She's not fighting for healthcare,
Yeah, it reminds me of the co-opting of the Me Too movement, which at its core it's legitimate. It's a legitimate movement, but it's been co-opted, and partly through moves like this, where you can just make a baseless claim like AOC did that she was emotionally abused by Nancy Pelosi.
I think she said psychologically tortured, because that's what set me the fuck off, because I'm like, can I introduce you to Julian Assange?
Every time I have to look at Nancy Pelosi's face, I'm psychologically tortured too.
Indeed.
So where do you draw the line? But she's so obviously using it as a way to manipulate, a way to snake herself through the halls of power there, and to provide cover for the fact that she's completely useless. And like all of these people, she's a careerist. And if that means supporting a war, if that means tweeting in favor of regime change in Cuba and then deleting those tweets, she'll do it.
Wow. Yes, she will. She's proven that over and over and over again. And it pisses me off too, because she uses it as a way to avoid criticism too. And it's the same thing. It makes me so angry. Kristen Mink did this the other day after the thing at the Capitol, where she's like, and she's not the only one. Lots of people do this. Oh my gosh, you're so mean to these women of color. Fuck off. Legitimately fuck all the way off in all the ways possible. It has nothing to do with their gender. It has nothing to do with their color whatsoever. That is offensive. Like, that's so ridiculous just on its face. It's absurd beyond measure. I'm just as hard on Bernie Sanders. I'm just as hard on Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. Like, I don't like any politicians. It doesn't matter. Like, you cannot hide this identity politics bullshit where you get to hide behind I'm a woman of color to avoid criticism is vile. That is vile.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. And you notice that it's not women of color saying that, right?
No, it's like, always white women.
The anti-Karens. I don't know.
It is. It's always white women. Yeah. It is always white women making that excuse.
I know. It's weaponizing wokeness, right? They talk about that sometimes, weaponizing wokeness.
And that's a real problem that we're facing right now. I mean, there's so much, like, you can't even talk about some stuff without like being canceled. I mean, sweet fucking Jesus. I can't even talk to, and I don't know your position on this, but I can't even talk to Magnus, who's a Boogaloo boy, who is anti-imperialist and pro-LGBT. He's bisexual. He has been like put his body in between Proud Boys and protesters, or cops and protesters. Do I disagree with him on a number of issues? Absolutely. But is he a fucking fascist? No, that's ridiculous. And if I even have a conversation with him, I'm like the Antichrist all of a sudden. And that's dumb as fuck. And I'm so tired of that shit. Like these people want to like isolate themselves into their safe little bubble. And you're never going to get anything done that way, y'all. Ever. Nope. Ever. You're going to have uncomfortable conversations with people you don't agree with. That's how it works.
Yeah. Absolutely. And those in power don't want us to have those conversations. That's the point.
Divide and conquer. They want to keep us divided over our little disagreements rather than banding together. Like, that's, what happened with the Medicare for All marches, right? I mean, some people started crying Nazi on the organizers, which was just BS. And some people were like, oh, well, I don't know. There was, right. Because the AOC crowd like completely ignored it. Then some leftists were too left for it. Right. So like, it's like, this is something that like 70-80% of the country agrees on. Are you serious that we can't get ourselves together as a left to go and march for it? Like,
okay, listen, Medicare for All for me, like I'm pretty far to the left. So Medicare for All for me is a compromise. That's a big compromise for me. But I'm willing to make that compromise because I am not a fucking idiot. And I understand that people like, what is it? Like 68,000 people a year or something die from lack of healthcare. Dude, and right now public opinion is that's where we're at, is Medicare for All. So let's do that. Right? Jesus Christ, we can't even just get together to do a thing that's hugely popular, has an enormous amount of support. We can't even get together to actually like just do that. This is why I have no hope. This is legitimately why I have no hope. It's something when they asked me to MC the Columbus event, the Columbus March for Medicare for All, first I was like, are you sure you want me? Because and I told them, you're going to get so much shit for this. And they did.
Your mic's going to be smoldering when I'm done with it.
And it was, and I did not hold back. But yeah, when they first asked me to do it, I was like, I told Chris, who was the guy who helped organize it, I'm like, this is going to be so easy. Oh my God, this is going to be so easy. Like I'm used to Assange stuff, which is so fucking hard. Like, I don't mean to like, oh, pity me, cry. It's hard, right? Okay. It's a very controversial issue. There's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of smears that go along with Julian Assange. It's really difficult to get people to support him. It's hard to combat all the propaganda. It's like, it sucks. So I thought, Medicare for All, like 68% of the country supports this shit. This is going to be a cakewalk. Boy, was I wrong. Holy fucking shit, was I wrong? I mean, I don't even have words. I don't have words.
What are some of the major arguments that people have against Medicare for All? I understand the corporate interests involved, the lobbying that's involved against it, and how that keeps certain people in positions of power. But I've never encountered somebody who's against it who has any kind of coherent argument as to why they stand that way, other than the fact that, their favorite politician takes the same position for reasons of preserving power. So I don't understand, like, individually what people's reasons are for standing against it, besides, hero worship. Maybe you two know something I don't, but
I mean, I don't think they do, right? Because 70-80% of this country is in favor of it, right? So you're only talking about 20% of the people who are either rich or so sycophantic to the rich that they would sacrifice their own healthcare for it. Right.
And the reason why it's taken us this long to get to this level of support is because of something I've spoken about many times. Wendell Potter is a whistleblower who used to work for the health insurance lobbyists. And his job was literally to write propaganda, misinforming the American public about the Canadian healthcare system. And that's, again, why I always say that narrative control is the front line. If you want to fight for healthcare, you're going to have to combat against that, because that was very effectively used against us to prevent support growing for support Medicare for all. And we're only just now starting to see an increase in public support because, we've been able to figure out a way to effectively combat against that. And I'm not convinced that some of that isn't by design and that they haven't, like, they're not using this as like, because you always have to be mindful of the fact that it's just like legalizing marijuana. They're currently trying to figure out a way to privatize that, make sure that the rich are the only ones that are going to benefit from that. And it's going to be the same way with Medicare for all. We're going to have to be extremely vigilant about the kind of bill that's passed, how it's passed, all of those things, because they will try to find a way to use it to their advantage and to make it as beneficial for the rich as possible. So, I mean, we still have to be hyper vigilant, even if we are able to get to the point where we can pass a Medicare for all or something similar. But I think that we just, that's why that's a huge part of the reason is that we've been so effectively propagandized to not just vote against our own interests, but think against our own interests.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is a moment where I had two things in my head, and if I say one of them, then the other one will go away. I hate it when that happens. But what was I gonna say? Crap. I don't know.
We were talking about healthcare propaganda, Wendell Potter. Why do people not support healthcare for all?
I mean, yeah. I was gonna tie it back to the evictions thing. Why? I can't remember what my tie back was now.
Well, I mean, it is like all interconnected. Okay, I'm going to distract you again, but here I go.
Cool.
But that's something else that I've noticed recently, because Fiorella got a lot of pushback when she brought up Julian Assange at the March for Medicare for All. And then Max and Franco both got a lot of pushback for bringing up foreign policy at the Capitol thing. And people do not understand. And Jesse and I talk about this all the time. We're really big about like making the connections. All of these things are interconnected. All of them impact each other. Like the fact that we don't have healthcare is directly connected to the eviction moratorium, because if people had healthcare, they would be less likely to be in a position where they couldn't afford to pay their rent because they wouldn't have such enormous healthcare bills. And Julian Assange, like I just said, impacts literally everything, like the stuff that's happening to him. I mean, it's not just about him. Like it's so much bigger than that, but he's just like the the mechanism they're using in order to take away our rights. It's not about silencing him, it's about silencing everybody. But yeah, I mean, all of these things are interconnected, and I think that people think that these issues happen in a vacuum, and that's just not the case.
And it's a big part of it is that they're presented as single issues to us by the politicians we've been talking about. And so one week it's Medicare for all or not Medicare for all that is being focused on, and then the next week it's the hearings into the riots at the Capitol, and they're packaged for us so that we're not able to, or we don't see the reason to connect the dots to see the through line that runs through all of this. And as far as Assange goes, Assange exposed crimes of state funded by the if you really look at the military budget, it's over $1 trillion, but let's say $740 billion right now. He exposed the crimes of state paid for with that money, which could go to Medicare for all, which could go to keeping people in their homes, and providing them with subsidies so they can buy food, so they can survive. The connection is really, I don't want to say easy, but it's obvious to make if you want to make the effort, and if you can think outside of issues as singular, like women's rights when it comes to abortion, right? Pro-choice, like it's not just a single issue. It's not in a vacuum, like Misty said, by itself, just kind of like rotating in there for us to ponder. All of this stuff is connected, and I think a lot more people need to realize that. Get woke to that. But seriously, not making those connections is is why we find ourselves where we are right now.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that, dude.
Yeah.
100%. You know I do though. Yeah. So I don't want to keep you too long. Sorry. We do this a lot. Like we tend to
that's
go
cool.
super long. Okay. Yeah. We tend to go super long.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you want to stay, yeah, that's cool. But we always go really long, and I always feel kind of bad.
that's cool. I'm good.
Okay. Cool.
Friday night, let's party.
Is
You
it Friday?
signed
Oh
up for
yeah.
it.
It is
It
Friday. It
Oh,
is.
happy Friday.
I'm going to Jimmy Dore tomorrow. Woo woo.
You are. I'm so
I am.
jealous.
I'm
Oh my
really
God.
excited.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so,
So you're gonna
That's
be in,
actually, it's actually kind of cool because so we went 2 years ago to Chicago, which is like a 6-hour drive for me, but it's, it's worth it. So we went 2 years ago, and that's actually where I met Andrew and Taylor from the Action for Assange vigils. It was right after Unity for Jay had just like ceased all their efforts. And Andrew and Taylor were just starting off the vigils and like trying to get that rolling. And I was really excited because I was bummed when Unity for Jay quit. And I'm like, somebody needs to do this. And I was really pumped that somebody was like picking up the mantle and continuing the effort. And so I was really excited that they were going to be there. They were going to bring wristbands, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to meet these people. So I like ran up to them and I'm like, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much. I was like one of their first followers. It was really cool. They sat behind us during the show. And I was drunk. Right. And so Andrew, who, if you know Andrew, he is extremely persuasive and relentless. Like if he wants something, he will just keep after you. But they asked me while I was there if I would be a guest on the vigil. And because like I had no desire to ever be on camera, like I'm really awkward but I'm drunk. So I'm like, yes, I will absolutely do that. And then the next day I was sober and I'm like, shit, I just totally agreed to do something that I really don't want to do. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just ignore them. No, Andrew does not allow you to ignore him. So they hounded me. I ended up being a guest finally. And then they asked me to be like a recurring guest host. And then they asked me to just be a host. And that's how I ended up on the Action for Assange vigils. So it's kind of cool that I'm going back to Jimmy Dore in Chicago 2 years later. And, it's like a whole like full circle moment. And I love it.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love the Action for Assange vigils. I really do. But they're hard. It's heavy stuff. It's exhausting.
I'm sure.
Exhausting. It is. I mean, so when we do the episodes about special administrative measures, for example, they're like, I can't sleep for like a week.
Wow.
That stuff's brutal. So
yeah,
it's not a lot of fun, but it's necessary. So
well,
here we
thank
are. Well, don't thank me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really like something that needs to be thanked. It's just,
it's thankless, isn't it? So thank you.
It is. That's okay. Okay. I should just accept the thank you and shut the fuck up. Anyway. Okay. So another thing I wanted to ask you about is, so Nina Turner just.
What I was going to say before. Do you mind? If
okay. No. Go. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So what I was going to say is that you were talking about, we have to be really careful about them if they ever pass Medicare for all, what specifically they're passing and what they're calling it, right? I mean, and that is something that you can track throughout the entire Biden administration at this point, is that they are announcing things that they are not doing. That's just how they're dealing with life. And that's essentially what happened, right, with the eviction thing, because I think I saw a Jimmy piece on this that Biden said in a press conference like the day after that they were, oh, well, I have to talk to the CDC and I'm not super sure that we can do like half of a, moratorium on half the country and blah, 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 blah. And like, first of all, just do it on the whole country. What are you even talking about? Number one. Number two, like, they keep saying, oh, well, it's gonna, relieve 11 million people. And I'm like, that number smells fishy to me. 11 million people sounds like a lot. Well, 11 million people, I looked into it. 11 million people is the number of people who rent in the areas that the CDC is saying that is going up with the Delta variant right now. So that is going to change in a month from now when the Delta variant, and it inevitably spreads, because it's being carried by and being caught by people who are double vaxxed. So this is happening. This is happening. We're going through a second pandemic right now. This is happening. Okay. So there is no, I mean, even if you thought the best of this situation, which I don't believe happened, I don't believe that there's anything to celebrate, because I don't think that they're actually doing anything in those areas. I really don't think that that's happening. Then even if you do believe that that's something that's happening, that's still only 26% of the total people who rent in this country. That's only 26%. And again, that these numbers are inflated to begin with, because they make every government program so that it's difficult to get, right? I mean, I looked into rental assistance in the first part of COVID. I thought I might be in a special situation, and it turned out that I didn't even care to see if I would qualify, because it was already a giant wait list. Like, the program was full, it was over, and there was already a wait list for the next one. And that's like, I mean, maybe like a couple of weeks after it was announced. Like, that's what we're talking about here. The actual number of people that are actually helped by stuff like this is actually minuscule. Mm-hmm. It's minuscule. And landlords will do anything that they can to get their piece of the pie. They will do anything they can to get you out if they want you out. Like, that's known, right? I mean, that's known. So the fact that we think that this is even going to help, like, anywhere near a majority of people that actually need help is laughable to me. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Don't trust statistics, because they will always try. I mean, literally, this is such an open secret that it was like on the West Wing how they do it. Like, how they mess with numbers, right? Like, and that's funny. I was a huge watcher of the West Wing too. I loved it for a long time. But, now I realize how sugar-coated a lot of it is. And I'm like, oh, but they're actually talking about corruption that is normalized. Oh.
Yeah.
So,
and that's part of the propaganda. I mean, they're really good at doing that across the board for everything.
Yeah. Right. And when I say that the entertainment industry is involved with the news media, I also mean shows like that. I also mean Aaron Sorkin. I mean, he's a very, he cemented sort of the Clintonian way of thinking when he wrote that show.
And I mean, House of Cards as well.
House of Cards. Yeah. All of those shows.
And the way they present the corruption is like, corruption's bad, but look how cool it can be.
Right.
Look how edgy it can be.
Yeah, it's so sexy and cool.
People dying and treachery. Yeah. Get into it.
Well, it's no different than all the cop shows. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's, propaganda, man. It's terrible. And there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's how many Law and Orders are there? Like 94?
Yeah.
Is that the right show? Law and Order?
Yeah.
What's the other one? There's another one that has like 94 different.
CSI.
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah. There's a bunch of them.
I think they've got the whole alphabet covered at this point.
NCIS and all those.
Yeah, there's like the something SVU and
Right. So, like, when you think about something as broad as like the propaganda police, for example, like, you have to really to really understand it, you would have to like write a doctorate, like a doctoral thesis on like everything from, the Keystone Cops to Andy Griffith to, all the cop shows today. And I think that it's been a very interesting evolution, if you would really think about that, because our cop shows have gotten more and more, cops and robbers, more chase scenes, more violence. Like, it's become a lot more militant, right? Militant is the word for it, because that's literally what's happening to police departments, and they're normalizing it, right? They're normalizing it and justifying it by saying these people are so awful and dirty for being, going up against the law or whatever. And I've been on the wrong side of the law myself a few times. I know how easy it is. Because when you're poor, to survive, you have to jump you through hoops, you have to, cut corners, you have to take where you can, because you start to realize that people are taking from you, and that's why you're poor. That's why, rich people don't exist because they worked hard. Rich people exist because poor people exist, because rich people steal labor from the poor. I mean, that's obviously everybody agrees with that who probably watches the show, but like that is the essence of our battle, right? Is to sort of, you know, get everyone's mind right about that. Number one.
Yes. And it's really frustrating that a lot of people don't see that. Like, you're right. People that watch this show are obviously going to be on board with that. But, you know, like when I talk to libertarians, or when I talk to, like, we talked to Reed Coverdale, and I'm sure that he 100% disagrees with me on this. But there are a lot of people who just don't recognize the fact that, and I don't really give a shit about what you think about, oh, well, this isn't real capitalism. And if we had real capitalism, I don't care what you call it. All I'm saying is that it is never going to be okay for us to have a system in which it is so easy for a tiny segment of the population to exploit the rest of the population for their own personal benefit. And that's exactly what is happening. I mean, it's not just necessarily about labor. It's about resources, the way that Nestle is taking all the water, and Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland, and BlackRock's buying up all the houses. It's not just about labor. I mean, we are being like demolished from every angle. And that, to me, that is like a no-brainer. There should never be that level of exploitation in any civilized society. It seems like that's just like so unbelievably obvious, and it's frustrating that it's something we have to explain to people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know what's funny? That kind of reminded me of like what I will do in my mind when I'm driving down the road, and like, you know, I'm in an area where I'm sort of familiar with, and I know I'll have to come a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if I start a new job or something like that, I'm in this area, but I'm scoping it out for the first time. I will look around to see if there are any like abandoned houses, if there are any grassy areas, anywhere I could potentially camp if I lose my housing. Right. I've just been in a lot of different situations, and that's like a survival reaction. But, you know, legally speaking, all of those places that I'm looking for would be illegal for me to stay in. There is really no patch of land where I could just go camping if I felt like it. You have to go to a camping ground and pay to get in. Right. I mean, that's literally that you're absolutely right. Like the right to even exist on this land is at risk. Yeah.
And it trickles down to something as simple as trying to find a public bathroom in a major city, especially New York. Try it. It's next to impossible. I don't know what it's like now. I lived in New York for 10 years, but I haven't for about 4 years now. I'm sure it's gotten worse, but back then, really the only resort was if you could find a Starbucks and sort of cheat your way into, or sneak your way into the bathroom. And even then, it was a public bathroom. And I remember going in one once. I just really had to piss, and it was my only option. And I went in, and somebody had, I don't know how they'd managed it, but they had shit on the wall, but it was like an explosive shit. So it looked like a blast pattern on the wall. God. But, you know, this is the type of like beating down of the human psyche and the human energy and essence, the soul, if you want to call it that capitalism engenders. I mean, it's just one example, and there are a lot worse ones than that. And I'm not whining about it by any means, but the fact that it gets so granular as to you can't even excrete without going into a place and being a customer is, you think about it like that, and it's true. It's insane. Like, this is how we want to live our lives, this managed. And I don't think many people do, but it is how we are living them.
For sure. And I mean, think about the other end of that stick, right? Like, if you were a homeless person in need of a bathroom, you know, if you go into a Starbucks bathroom, you're lucky enough to sneak in, then you got a line of people waiting behind you, right? Because that means that place is that busy enough that they didn't say, oh, excuse me, I got to buy something, right? So like, not that I'm speaking from experience, but I'm speaking from experience when I may or may not have had to go into a Starbucks bathroom at some point to drop a D, and fucking got several knocks on the door, be like, ma'am, what the fuck, get out of there, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And I was just dropping a D. What if you had to fucking like give yourself a towel bath? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if you had to do your entire like daily hygiene in those kinds of situations? Like, there is no accommodation for that whatsoever. You're absolutely right.
No, and what really disturbs me is that we've just allowed ourselves to think that that's okay. Like it's, we've dehumanized humans so much that we like can't even afford them the basic dignity of being able to like go pee
Yeah,
in private.
I remember seeing people shit in public once on a um, train platform, and once in Union Square. And I remember telling some people about it, and their reaction was, ugh, why would somebody do that? And my response to them was, why? Yeah, why would somebody do that? Like, what's wrong out there that somebody has to do that? No, they're not doing it because it's fun or they're being exhibitionists. They're doing it because they have to. They have no other choice. And why is that? And, that's a huge discussion to have. And I think we've touched on some major points in that discussion tonight. But yeah, a lot of people just haven't had to struggle in that sense. They're so alienated from it. And it's the same can be said for foreign wars. It's, the cliche, out of sight, out of mind, but it's cliche because it's because it's true.
Yeah, for sure.
It is true. We've talked about this, many times on this show. After Vietnam, they learned to keep the realities of war hidden. And we don't get to see the devastation. We get to see the bombs being launched and Brian Williams creams his pants over how beautiful it is, but we don't get to see where it lands and the devastation that it causes. And furthermore, when we have people who are brave enough to expose the atrocities of war, like Daniel Hale, for example, we put him in prison. And Barack Obama is able to have a 500-person birthday party celebrating his 60th birthday when he committed war crimes that Daniel Hale exposed, and the wrong fucking man is in prison. But that's where we're at. We punish our truth tellers, and it sucks. Like, we're so fucked up as a society, honestly, that I don't know if there's even a shot of being able to turn it around. Like, we have it just we've completely fucked up this opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in any way religious. Like, I don't, but it is really cool that humanity has been given a shot at existence on this planet for whatever reason, and whatever you believe, it doesn't matter. It's still pretty cool that we have this chance, and we could not be fucking it up worse.
That is accurate. That is accurate.
I mean, we could not be fucking it up worse. We're doing like, it's unreal. I mean, we treat the weakest among us the worst, and it's devastatingly depressing, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh. It really is. Anyway, maybe that's a good place to wrap it up, since I just doomed and glued it. Yeah, happy Friday, y'all.
Happy Friday.
Right. Anyways, okay,
well,
so yeah.
Did you want to say something about Nina Turner?
Oh yeah. Do we want to talk about Nina Turner?
Oh yeah. Just that I had trouble even sharing her posts after I found out that she had scheduled a door knocker event on the Medicare for All March day.
Yeah.
And like, I guess this tells you how into the Medicare for All March that I was, because I was pretty into it.
You did a great speech too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah, I was like, what the fuck am I going to say to this crowd of people who have no idea who this I am? And like, I'm a podcaster, but I have no following. So I guess I'm going to go with
Same
you don't
here.
know me.
Yeah.
It worked out. But anyway, yeah, so I was very, I felt very betrayed by her in that moment. And so for me, like, yeah, I'm not at all surprised. I'm not at all surprised that she didn't win. Other than that, I don't know if I have really too much to intellectually contribute to that, because I really wasn't following the specifics of her campaign that closely.
Yeah, we covered it on Sabby's show earlier. And I think I pretty
Yeah.
much said everything that I need to say about that on that. You guys should go check that out. And definitely follow Fred
Yeah.
Hampton Leftists, all of them. They're doing great work over there. I
Absolutely.
was on Meg's show yesterday and I was on Sabby's show today. And they're doing awesome work. Oh, and I had the guys on Bitch on Wednesday. Well, some of them. I had JB, Nick, and RJ. And then this coming week on Wednesday, I'm having Compton J. And then because he couldn't make it like this past Wednesday. So he's coming next week and I don't want him to come alone. So I think some of the other guys are going to come back. Or maybe I'll get some of the ladies too. Who knows? I feel like I'm like cheating on MCSC with Fred Hampton Leftist. Sorry, Nico.
Hard not to, but
I'm just trying to cross pollinate our power, fams. That's all.
Yeah.
You got to strengthen numbers. So yeah, Fred Hampton Leftists are doing great work for sure. But yeah, so I mean, Nina brought this on herself, and I, just go watch Sabby's show. They both had excellent things to say about it. She's like a beyond a disappointment, but they all are. I mean,
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is that even if she did win, she would be a disappointment just like the squad. Go look at her campaign page. It's still up. She doesn't have a section for foreign policy. Like it's not like AOC, like with AOC where she did and then disappeared it. Like she just doesn't even have it. She's probably thinking like, why? I could put up what I really think about foreign policy, but if I win, it's going to get mutated into something else that keeps forever wars going.
Well,
Why
I
even
think that
try?
there's a very good chance that she doesn't have great foreign policy positions anyway.
Right.
These are
Right.
all imperialists. Like they're all imperialists.
I had a quick thought about the topic before we turn to Nina, about foreign policy and how, you guys were saying like people don't really recognize how connected it is to domestic policy. And I think that it's also easy, like you were completely right about Vietnam sort of turning people, waking people up to this harsh reality, right? And I think that this summer, this was the past year or so, we've seen that with the George Floyd protests, and we've seen that with like cops and their body mics, right? So like this is the kind of news that we are experiencing now, that is waking us up, right? But that's not foreign wars, that's domestic wars. So I think that a lot of people feel more connected to that because of that reason, because there's a lot more of that footage floating around online. Whereas like you're right, we're totally blinkered from that in Syria and in other foreign countries. So it's really hard to get reporting.
I would argue that there is a connection between the domestic wars and the foreign wars, especially when it comes to police
Sure.
having this training exchange program with Israel where they learn IDF, ethnic cleansing and apartheid tactics of violence, and then bring them back home and apply them here. And that's why we're seeing, it's not like police murdering people of color in mass is a new thing. It's been going on for centuries upon centuries. We know this, but we're seeing it more out in the open because of cell phones. Body cams don't save people's lives. They're worthless. But we're seeing it more and more. And it's when we do get to see it, we can see the tactics of violence that the cops are using. And they're no different than what somebody in a wartime setting, a soldier in a wartime setting would use at this point. And you look at the gear, you can go online and find, I forget the site, but it has a really great graphic of what police riot gear looked like, I think starting in the 50s and then up until now. And so you just go along kind of like, it's kind of like the evolution of man silhouette thing that we're all familiar with. But you can see it with regard to cops, how more and more gear, they get bigger and bigger. They look more and more imposing. You see less and less of their face behind helmets and whatever other facial guards they wear, more and more weaponry. And that is directly linked to the foreign wars, I would say. So, and that's a huge problem because none of that is slowing down. It's getting worse. And You know, a lot of people are doing a lot of good work toward abolishing police, which I think is what needs to happen. But I still think, despite George Floyd, despite Breonna Taylor, despite so many people who've been murdered by police in just the last 10 years, a much bigger, much more granular conversation needs to happen for us to make real progress on that front. And, you know, I count myself among those people who needs to have more of a conversation or be more active in that conversation or make the conversation more active, however you want to look at it. So, yeah, that was just my piggybacking onto your point.
No, you made some excellent points for sure. I agree.
Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, so yeah, we've taken up tons of your time. I am sorry about that. We do tend to
No
ramble
problem.
on and on. But do you want to tell everybody where they can find you, your show, all that good stuff, so everybody can keep up with what you're doing?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I'm at Millensplain on Twitter, MILLENSPLAIN, Millensplain, and or millensplain.com. And that has links to everything. I have a YouTube channel. I have an Anchor podcast. I also have articles linked there. And I'm starting a new thing that if I don't do live streams. So if you would like to have a comment display on the screen of one of my future podcasts, you can donate a coffee to me and I will display your comment. If you would like a response to a question or comment, you can donate 2 coffees and I will respond to your question on camera. I'll be doing Q&A episodes to address those. Also, I'm going to have Sabby on my show. I have a couple of interviews I'm backed up on. I had RJ's come out today, but I have a second one with RJ. I have a JB one's coming out. I've got a Jackie one's coming out. I'm hopefully gonna have Tara Reid on. I am also, and I also have Caleb Mopin from RT. That's coming out. So
I've been trying to track Caleb down for weeks now, and
I can get
DMing.
Convo to talk to him. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I've been DMing him, but he's super busy.
Yeah.
And I don't think I presented him all the information about our show, and I think he's cool with everything, but I just haven't been able to pin him down. But I would really like to talk to him about Cuba. So we'll see.
I will, I'll try to DM him a good word for you if you want. I mean, I don't think he's my best friend or anything, but we had a good conversation.
Yeah, that would be an awesome favor. It's not that he's not down. It's just
he's busy.
Yeah, he said as much himself that he's swamped. So yeah, I'm not bringing that up to criticize him. But yeah, I'd really like to have a conversation with him because I think he's got some really good knowledge and insights to share on what's going on down there and how that too is connected to just about everything we've talked about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that conversation. I hope it happens.
Me too. Yeah. Caleb, if you're watching.
Yeah, Caleb. Come on, dude.
You're still welcome.
Yeah. Quit being such a turd, man. Anyways, did you get to plug all your stuff?
I think so. Millensplain.com, that has pretty much everything. I'm also the video lead for ourunitedleft.org. If you would like to volunteer, we are essentially we like to provide or like help with PR for certain movements and organizations. So we try to band organizations together and we elevate certain events, certain protests, certain strikes, etc. So if you would like to help out with that, go to ourunitedleft.org and fill out a thing. And I think that's it. I do have a PayPal. I am extremely poor. If you can help me, extremely meaning I'm exaggerating a little bit on that because clearly I have internet, but please help me out. I can really could use it because I am a month behind on my rent. So I appreciate that. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. And, I hope to do it again soon. Like I would love to have both of you on my show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I should say that millennial splaining is not specific to millennials. Like, I sometimes am the millennial that does the splaining, and then sometimes people splain to me. So, that's
Well,
how
Jesse
I
and I are both old millennials, so
Well, me too. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm on the like the cusp. Like I'm like barely. I think it's like from 80, and I was born in 82, so I'm like right in
Okay.
there. Yeah.
That counts.
Um.
Yeah, I was 83. So
Nice.
Yeah, we're
that's
both. I
that's
think they call us
millennial.
Xennials because we're like that weird in between Generation X and Millennials. So what the fuck ever. All that stuff is weird anyway. The generational labels and all that crap.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so it was super fun to talk to you. I'm glad that we finally got to do this.
Yeah.
And we would love to come on your show anytime. Just let us know whenever you have some availability. And thanks for doing the work that you do. I mean, we need more voices out there, like I said, to combat the propaganda. So thanks for doing the work that you do. Thanks for coming on to talk to us. Thanks for letting me rant and ramble, and having the patience with me that some people don't have. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate you, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thank you so much.